Long-running franchises that haven't had a new game in a long time are always a special case on how people will react to them when they finally get one. My favorite example for that is Federation Force, a game that isn't great but it's also not total trash. Released at a time where the last Metroid was already controversial with no mainline title in sight. So people went extra harsh on it. The same thing can be applied to Silent Hill F, a totally new game after 13 years. No demake, no pachinko, no roguelike game for a dead handheld. There will be spoilers and everything through the video and not just at specific points of it, so do not watch it if you care about those. Even before the game came out, it already was controversial. For good reasons, because many will say, what does this have to do with Silent Hill? What does Silent Hill truly mean? Does a Silent Hill game have to play in Silent Hill? Most people would say yes. I mean, even Silent Hill 4 didn't, and that one was already the black sheep of the herd for a long time. I personally always like the concept that most places have their own version of the other world. That it's not just a little town called Silent Hill in the middle of America with a bunch of people in the cold that has the power to make people go on a trip through rusty corridors, but that every town has the potential and it will always look different. For example, if you live in Germany and don't drink beer, it will look like the Oktoberfest to you. That would be my very own hell. In interviews they said it's a game about feminism and all that, and it turns some people off, mostly from big Twitter accounts who just farm engagement bait for an allowance so they can buy themselves some candy at the local kiosk from those pennies. Do people who see the word feminism immediately think the game ends with Hinako looking at the camera and saying, hey, we have to kill all men? I do understand that things are more relatable when you're the same gender and all that, but how many of us killed their own wife? Not too many, me included, hopefully. Would anyone bat their cute eyelashes if the game had a playable guy who is told to take over his family's business, even if he didn't want to do it? Or a guy who was raised to be a man and was never allowed to show his weak side, or otherwise his dad would beat him even harder with the belt? I would even go as far as to say you could easily exchange Hinako for a guy called Higurashi and nothing would change about how those themes are portrayed here, to a certain degree. For better and worse. There are themes at work here that mostly only work with women, but there's more to it. People are so hellbent about their thinking that any kind of woman protagonist is some kind of woke propaganda nowadays, and it makes me a bit sad for them how lost they are in this whole culture war thing. The game portrays everyone in bad lights. Women who get so jealous that they would have no remorse about killing someone if it means they can be loved. Men who only see women as a thing to make kids with, and so on. Everyone here is a shitty person in their own right. The game doesn't say that every woman is a gift from God or anything like that. But people will see their favorite Twitter accounts post these kind of statements even if they're not true, and then they believe that, and then you end up with people who think, oh, the game hates me because I'm a man or something like that. I don't get it. Even nowadays, a bad spawn point like that can make your life harder. Imagine being born to a pair of Redditors who won't allow you to watch Paw Patrol, so instead you have to watch their favorite childhood shows from the 80s, so when you go to school everyone thinks you're the weird kid since you are not allowed to play Roblox with them and instead have to play Ocarina of Time even if you hate it because your dad forces it onto you. In normie terms, imagine if your dad forces you to be a football player because he didn't manage to do it himself back in the day, and you accept it because you don't want to disappoint your dad, while he also berates you for sucking at it. That's basically what it boils down to, so in parts the story is relatable to everyone, not just women. A story about your parents wanting you to be a different person than what you want to be, or society in general. Sometimes because your parents just want to follow the normal rules of society so their family is not the odd one out, or because they want to live their life through your own. That's not the only thing about the story though, just wanted to rant about this point a bit. Sorry to any Redditors, some of you can be cool I guess. But please let your kids play what they want to play, maybe not when it comes to Roblox, don't just make them play the classics. The game starts and this is not Silent Hill. It's a small little town in the mountains of Japan where the story takes place, and where totally normal things happen. Having a little fight with your parents so we run away for a bit till things calm down. Even I had that happen and I mostly was a good boy. Do you think our neighbor sometimes sits here and enjoys a cold one while, looking at the beautiful women in his magazine and rubbing one out? Meeting up with our friends and just enjoying a nice day, even if it may look a little bit foggy. Life can't all just be sunshine and rainbows. That just makes it more fun though, especially when playing hide and seek. Doesn't take too long for shit to go south and now your friend is dead, and you too if you don't sprint for your life. And take some drugs to feel better, like the average bicycle driver that drives these big races in Paris, right? Surely nothing bad will happen from being too reliant on drugs to fix your problems. Soon after that, you will also be greeted with the biggest elephant in the room, the combat. When it comes to the combat, I'm a bit on the fence, unlike Hinako and her friends, because yep, let's find the key to open this fence gate. The devs clearly wanted you to think, hey, you think they can just jump over here, right? Even Hinako looks like she's like, hey, why don't we just jump over it, guys? Over the course of the whole game, you have those moments where you think, can't we just go around? But that's the staple of horror. If everyone always did the smart thing, then nobody would ever die. Even if it makes you think that's too dumb. Maybe there's a story reason for it though, who knows? I think the reason why many people dislike the combat here is that its presentation doesn't fit with their view of Silent Hill, and that's fine. Normally, you're an average guy or lady, just like in real life. Even if you lift weights, you're probably not used to punching things with a steel pipe, so while in our heads we like to imagine ourselves being able to fight off intruders and all that with a baseball bat, we would suck at it too. Homecoming also had counters, but it didn't make you think Alex is some kind of superhuman. Here Hinako charges in whenever the enemy goes glitchy or time slows down like in the Matrix when you perfectly dodge something. If you would remove these two animations, then I think people would not hate it that much since it still feels fairly sluggish, especially if you try to dodge too much since stamina goes down fast, in hard mode at least. It's not like you can just endlessly roll and dodge, even if the timings are fairly big. Whenever you see an animation like that happening, you just kinda think like, wow, why is she suddenly so fast? Why can't she suddenly do that? Especially when they still introduce the combat. It's not scary when the game plops an enemy in front of you and then a pop-up appears where it tells you how your buttons work. It takes away every single bit of tension in that moment. It's one of those points where I can totally understand it if people hate it, and I also don't love it myself. I started the game on hard and hard, but after the first boss that was way too spongy, I thought, man, I wish I would have started on normal. Eventually I lowered the difficulty to normal because I just didn't want to deal with it anymore. The combat got too annoying and call it a skill issue or whatever, but if I had to do the last 2 hours of the game on hard, I would have quit the game probably. I can deal with it if you don't overuse it, which the game sadly does towards the end especially. Running away or around in the outer games is always a valid option because the streets of Silent Hill are wide. There's always space unless you're inside a building or alleyway and have to be careful. And if you really don't want to fight, you can shoot them from a distance. Here all the encounters are melee only since guns are rare sight in Japan. Unless you play Siren, even then they're still rare, but still, it's a gun, it's better than no gun, right? What if the game decides that you do not get to progress without fighting? Especially towards the end, the game boxes you into little battle arenas, where you can only escape if you kill a bunch of monsters who are paired with a spongy mini-boss again and again. You will feel like you're playing the new Doom game instead. Just so they can stretch out the game time for half an hour or a little bit more. It makes the game actively worse because you are just gonna be exhausted from it, and not in the scary way, more in the please let this over be, please let it end, please kind of way. The saddest thing is that the atmosphere in this part of the game is amazing with the sun coming back up and everything. Play a sick song in the background and let me walk home to see what awaits me there with Umineko after this nightmare. Instead, the nightmare is having to fight hordes of enemies on my way there that ruin the atmosphere because it's just not fun to kill too many enemies in such a small amount of time. And well, I will explain that later if you noticed it. I also want to talk more about the enemies, but for that I have to do a little detour to talk about another aspect of Silent Hill and how this game sadly does not measure up in one very big part of what makes those games feel so scary to me. For many people, Silent Hill is just a sad person going to a sad town to have them fight their sad life. How do you turn Silent Hill into something more than that? Like I mentioned earlier, Silent Hill 4 does not play in the actual town of Silent Hill, but it still does feel like a Silent Hill game, right? And that mostly comes down to how it plays pretty much like the others and to the aesthetic of the game itself. It's rusty, grainy, foggy, dark. The Otherworld is just like the other Otherworlds you have seen before. You will feel right at home. You will hear me say this a bunch of times through the video, but Silent Hill F is too beautiful in its depiction of its own Otherworld to truly be scary. Or even its normal world either. If you want to be scared by the sights the game has to offer, then I would tell you that's not possible. Silent Hill F wants to get into your brain through the themes of its story, instead of scaring you through its environment. At least that's how it feels like to me. Horror can be really subjective after all. I am normally the biggest scaredy cat that was born before the 2000s. I was scared by the unscariest things, even today. Except for the Mario 64 piano. I refuse to believe anyone in the world unironically got scared by it. Any top 10 scariest moments in non-scary video games video with the piano in it is automatically not valid. But here, the only times I got scared were pretty much jump scares, where enemies fell from the ceiling or grabbed me from around the corner where I couldn't see or hear them, and that should not be the case with Silent Hill. I think I would blame it on modern graphics, and that goes for most horror games, not just Silent Hill F. My brain doesn't have to fill in any blanks when I see these environments or monsters. They're almost too clean. I look at them and see everything they want me to see. None of the enemy designs in the game made me think, what the fuck is this? It all just feels so replaceable, even if their themes have weights to them. That also comes down to the game spelling out what they're supposed to be. Hinako has a little diary where she scribbles down details about the characters, story, enemies, puzzles, blah blah. She's great at art, so thanks for that, Hinako, but sometimes less is more. I appreciate the drawings, but the text maybe reveals a bit too much about them. It doesn't really take a genius to find out what they stand for anyways, but I guess they thought, hey, for the big dummies, we will tell you what they mean. Like this extra gropey old grandpa with a pot belly. The kind of weird uncle that gets too touchy and everyone in the family just jokes about it, and then everyone suddenly wonders why Uncle Klaus is suddenly in prison one day and can't come to the yearly Christmas party, and they pretend nothing was ever wrong with him even though everyone knew he, you know what he does. Or this big lady with many boobs who also looks pregnant and makes you think, yep, that is a metaphor for being a woman that is only loved for the ability of being a baby machine. The older games also had some more subtle or less subtle enemies, but here everything introduced can be understood even by big dummies who normally just watch Michael Bay movies. It basically leaves no room for your own thoughts about what they stand for. There is not a single enemy that made me think, what in the fuck is that thing? One of the enemies that left a deep impact on my brain was the twin victim from Silent Hill 4, maybe my favorite monster from the whole franchise. You go through the water prison and there's nothing, so you feel a bit safe, but then suddenly they get introduced by you swerving around and seeing them pointing at you, thinking, what is that? I still get goosebumps thinking about that moment. That single moment of meeting them for your first time is scarier than anything in Silent Hill F. It hurts me to say that. One of the most lame looking monsters in the game is this fatty. He might be the Watten's cousin, you know, everyone's favorite Dark Souls 2 boss. He's just a mass of flesh with a butcher knife and an arm that he can use like a tentacle, flowers blooming all over him. You look at him and think, what a boring design. Her journal also doesn't say much about it, but eventually you reach the point where you fight your parents and it's the blob. And because of that, she always thinks all men are like this because of her dad, and that's the reason why the other fatties exist around the town. Okay, that's kinda cool, but it doesn't change the fact that design is just lame. Was it planned to make her dad look like that, or is it just asset reuse? I would think the battle against your parents would give them unique forms and all that, and well, their battle is basically a wannabe Ornstein and Smough, on the topic of bosses. Bosses in Silent Hill always felt a bit out of place and were the worst part of the games for me. They can have some really cool designs, and obviously there's the whole theme behind most of them, where defeating them kinda makes you overcome your trauma with them. That does not change the fact that in the end you would just shoot them a few times with your shotgun ammo that you saved up, and there you go, boss down. Instead of turning them into more clever gimmick bosses maybe. How about a boss that asks you questions about the story to show them that you actually paid attention? Doesn't have to be super duper easy questions either, something like that. There would be many ways to make non-combat bosses, but obviously F is a bit more action orientated than the others, so it makes sense here. And boss battles also happen in the Otherworld, where there is no weapon breaking, and before every battle you basically get healing items stuffed down your throat. So I didn't really mind them, except that some of them were kinda spongy, but they most of the time looked really cool at least. But is a cool looking boss battle something you want in a Silent Hill game? When I fought this boss battle, I kinda thought like, whoa, it's like Sekiro. But that's not what you should think when you play Silent Hill game, right? Back to beauty again. I already talked about how the Otherworld isn't scary and never gets scary the farther you get into it. And I think it boils down to different cultures in the end. Back then, many Japanese people were religious and still are for their gods, their folklore and all that. They scrub their shrines clean daily with a cute shrine maiden dusting the steps of the shrine, making sure everything is super duper clean. And here the Otherworld is that shrine come to life. Maybe it's because the developers thought it would be an insult to destroy such beauty and make it look run down, how it normally would be in the Otherworld we know from Silent Hill. Almost as if this beauty is there to make you fall for it, to make you want to join a cult. With that, I don't want to say that every religion is a cult, and I think that religion has its place in the world, but many people sadly use it for their own gains. The whole game plays with that theme. Most of these shrines in the real world are sad sites now. Nobody is around, the leaves are everywhere instead of being tidied up, and there's a bunch of old unused ones because people just go to the somewhat newer shrine, and even that has seen better days. They lure you in for the beauty of it in the other world here, because they make things look beautiful, instead of it looking all worn down. A stark contrast to the druggies in the first Silent Hill, where using that drug trips you into hell pretty much. A metaphor of how drugs can make you see beauty, but that beauty is fleeting. And the more and more you take them, the more you won't be able to tell what is what. Just that the drug here is related to the code that is shown as society in a way. Just do what others expect of you and things won't be too bad, even though the game is also about real drugs that I will talk about later. The saddest thing about the game is that everyone is such a nothing character to me. Nobody gave me a reason to care about them really, because instead of feeling you're the character, you are just a bystander. It's weird to explain, but in the older games I felt the things are happening to the character and also me. I got invested into their stories, what trauma they went through, what is going on here, why are they made to go through these terrors. I had none of that here. There was no attachment whatsoever for me. Maybe because the game is so on the nose about much of it. You were as clueless as James himself when he came to Silent Hill, but here you most of the time know why these things are happening. It reveals its themes so early and so heavily that there's nothing subtle about them. You know Hinako doesn't want to be like the other girls, and that's why these puppets follow her, to hurt her for not being like them, a doll for men to toy with. You know Hinako's parents are shitty, you know rumors in a tiny town like this travel around at the speed of light and how it fucks you up, you know Rinko is a fucking bitch right from the start. There's no betrayal. Would it have been a cliché if one of her friends turned out to be a bad person? Yes, but it would have given it more depth. All of these characters, they are just what they are, what you see. Everything is presented to you on a silver platter without leaving the player guessing or having them make up their own theories. Nothing is left open really, even after getting all endings. It's a bag that got closed shut pretty much. I want to be able to see crazy theories, as long as they are not about getting your foreskin removed. Maybe that's impossible right now. Anyway you look, it's just people either trashing the game for the combat or people who say it's the best thing ever, but without any of that in-depth discussion I'm looking for, where people make me see things in a different light. There's maybe only a few things that made me think about what could this mean, like this big Kokashi doll. It appears at a part where you learn about your mom's sickness, but it could mean many things. As a non-Japanese person, I didn't know what Kokashi dolls are, so I googled them and they are made as a protection charm. For your kid to grow up healthy, but also for other reasons. It can make you think your mom is a lady that went obsessed with making these dolls to make them for herself so the sickness won't get her. But what if this is your mom trying to atone for her sins of letting your dad abuse you? Where every day she makes a new doll so things can be better for Hinako and she doesn't have to suffer through it. Your mom knows her place in the world, below men. She is too old school to break that norm, but she still wishes she could actually do that to protect you. But she does not have the courage for it, so she believes in the spirit power of these dolls. I'm a big Higurashi fan, and that's not something I would call subtle either, but there I cared about the characters, I felt emotions. Maybe it's unfair to compare it because a visual novel can build up its characters way more since you spend more time with them, but there they just catch you. Anytime Satoko's abuse is shown, it makes you mad and makes you think fuck that stupid government for not doing anything and fuck her uncle for being a piece of shit that deserves to lose all his limbs. These scenes are written in such a way that you feel like you're a part of them. You want to be able to help out too. Even if you only watch the anime, they get the point across amazingly well. I don't think anyone could watch those episodes and just think, wow, that's boring, wow, child abuse, wow, I'm gonna fall asleep, can we move on to the next part already? While here, when you see Hinako's dad scream at her, it just feels so lifeless in comparison. All you get are some short flashbacks where they get into a fight, and I want to feel more invested about it. I want to feel bad for Hinako and feel good for her for telling him to fuck off, but I just don't feel anything in these scenes. It's almost as if Ryukishi makes his own story since many things feel ripped straight out of Higurashi. It's comical how often you will think, wow, that's just like Higurashi, and instead of thinking it's just a neat little reference, you will start to think it's just him taking his own story and somehow making it a less interesting version of it for people who would never sit down to read a book. They even got the torture dungeon here too, but in comparison, it's just so lame. In Higurashi, those scenes really made me squirm. Maybe it was because I was younger, but it showed the brutality of it. Here it's just used as a backdrop pretty much, as a way to show you that you're gonna be shackled to a cage you want to escape from, a life you can't control yourself because you're owned by someone else. But there's nothing creepy about this part, you just walk right through it. This could have been such a fucked up part of the game where it really makes you think, fuck man, that's way too messed up. I don't want to see people's fingernails getting ripped out in 4K in a long drawn out cutscene or other gory things like that, those kind of scenes exist here too, but something that makes me not want to be here. Put the screams of all the people who didn't follow their orders here. Scratches all over the floor because they got pulled out of the cages against their will. Add at least some flavor to it. But I already complained about how this very clean world sadly hurts the atmosphere of the game for me. Imagine if Park Chan-wook, the guy behind the movie Oldboy, also worked on the shitty American remake of it. Why would someone do that to their own work? I expected way more from Ryukishi, something that leaves me thinking holy shit. I never got my holy shit moment in the story where it makes me think I did not expect that. Except for when you get a moment that makes you think, okay, this is just dumb, too dumb, but also maybe a bit cool dumb. Maybe his writing just does not work in a game that isn't allowed to go on for over 100 hours. His works rely on many characters where you wonder how their stories connect to each other, how it all ends up together, always having a vocal mystery in the background that makes you think I'm here for this, but I'm also now here for this. What is the Hinamisawa syndrome? How can these guys and ladies get the gold from some old madman? But the more you read their stories, the more you realize those mysteries are not truly the end goal, while here you have neither really. Like I mentioned earlier, even Silent Hill 2 was built like this, with wondering why James came here. Here that mystery is already solved from the start in a way. The only things at first that really make you think what does this all mean are the parts in the other world. Who is this man? Why does he wear the mask? If I pull it off, will he die? Here the story makes you wonder what he stands for. Is he really evil? Is he a good boy? And it turns out he's kinda bad but also kinda redeemed because he was possessed by an evil fox god that got transmitted into him when he was bitten by a fox and Hinako helped him, so he wanted her all for himself and he was the unwanted child from a big clan where the big shot fucked his mates and got one pregnant and had to kick her out, but then eventually the kiddo came back without his mom because the mom died, and then he is now the leader of the clan to take it over, and then you smash the god out of him. Something like that. There's obviously more to it, but saying the outline of it out like this, it makes you think, damn, that sounds bad, but I actually like the more weird aspects of the story, like this fox arm, or him branding you so you're his, since you actually got sold off to him in a pre-arranged marriage since your dad needed money, and why not make your daughter get married to a rich clan leader if the chance comes around. I guess some people will see him making you cut off your own arm so you can be a white arm, him branding you with the son of his clan, I think, getting your face cut off to be replaced by a mask as an act of grooming, and I also agree with it, but at the same time the game also shows him as a good guy in other endings. So it feels a bit weird when they pull the, hey, you know what, he's just a bit misguided and does not understand her true feelings, so don't be too harsh on him, and maybe Hinako will warm up to him eventually actually because, well, even though she got sold off to him, maybe they can find true love together, I don't know. It feels a little bit weird, I don't want to feel good for a guy who buys a lady, but back in the day it was kind of supposed to be happening like this, but at the same time it makes me think like, okay, he's not totally a shitty guy. I don't know, like, there's no black, there should be black and white here, but it's not black and white, and I'm like kind of torn on it, where I kind of think, okay, fuck you, but I'm also like, hey, it's like what the clan leader has to do, something like that, I don't know, yeah. So he's the reason why you got a fox arm in the other world, and I have to say, I love that at least. It still doesn't really change the combat too much, except that now you get another ultra powerful form where you can just smash any enemy you want, and the counter window got giant so it's hard to mess it up. I'm a sucker for random crazy things. How could someone not love to beat up baddies when turning into a fairy? No, I am not one. I would not say that these parts feel very Silent Hill, but they were one of the few things I will remember. And that's a bit sad to say about a game like this, I think. I would love to remember it for the twists, for the great characters, for the writing, for the mystery, for the atmosphere, for the creepiness, but it didn't manage to grab me with any of those. Only with the anime bullshit moments that most people would actually hate the game for. There are some endings that are better or worse, but maybe this will be the true hot take of my video here, but I think I like the first ending the most, where Hinako goes wild and just kills everyone at her first wedding and also her parents later. All because your friend Shu drugged you all the time because of your headaches. Instead of giving you normal medicine, he made his own little medicine since he comes from a family that dabbles a lot into medicine, and he uses some really strong flowers and other shit. You can read about it in some of the notes from the doctor. The cool thing about it is that the pond behind his house has this white flower. Seems a bit familiar, doesn't it? A drug made out of white flowers, almost as if this is the game's own version of the White Claudia. Especially since it says it grows close to water sources. It's a cute little nod to the first Silent Hill and the third one. Maybe this will make people rethink and accept it as a true Silent Hill game. But yeah, this ending just has a bit more of that holy shit moment I hoped for in the game. I wouldn't even blame Hinako for doing this either. At one point a person will break if they're forced into a life like this, and also have their supposedly best friend feed them strong drugs that make her hallucinate. It's also a strong metaphor against drugs. In our modern world you often just get told, yep, take these pills, they will help you. But is it really true happiness if you have to take pills to become happy? Now you can debate about that. I don't know what's right. Instead, the game in the other endings is more about showing you that you should talk and communicate with people, that talking with people is also needed for your life to become better, since those endings require you to beat the game without popping the pills. I don't wear a tinfoil hat all the time and think that modern medicine is bad or whatever, but in that kind of way I also think fairly old school, that I don't want to have to rely on these things except for when I have a headache and pop an aspirin. But regardless of how depressed I would get, I would never truly want to just swallow pills daily to fix it. I will just keep bottling my feelings up like I always do and enjoy my shitty life while pretending I don't. It will probably go down as the most controversial Silent Hill mainline game, so now the room can finally rest and pass the torch on, even when time passes. Sometimes people need some time to get used to something new, but here the rift feels just too big for most people to change their mind on it. We will see about that though when the first 5-hour-long story retelling videos are coming out, the ones that are disguised as video essays with nothing to say in the end. Except that they are retelling the story. It sounds like I hate the game, but I don't, I'm just disappointed by how unscary it was. Normally when I play Silent Hill games I always have those moments where the oppressive atmosphere and the noises and the distorted radio sounds of the enemies give me goosebumps and I don't want to continue playing, but here there was none of it. And like I mentioned, I'm normally the kind of person that shits their pants at everything. The thing that disappointed me the most was the soundtrack. I wasn't the biggest fan of Umineko, so you can stone me for saying that, but I think the OST for it is one of the best video game soundtracks of all time. Maybe not even just video games, but everything. That's how good it is. Without it, I would have enjoyed the game even less. So with Silent Hill F, you put Akira Yamaoka and Dai together, and you get probably the most forgettable Silent Hill music of all time. I also know the Umineko OST wasn't just done by Dai, but also ZTS, who is mostly known for the absolute bangers that include a lot of electronical melodies that would be maybe a bit out of place here, but still. I am not the smartest person, you can tell me I'm not the smartest person when it comes to anything, when it comes to music. I don't know how to write it or make it myself, but that goes for most people playing video games or watching movies. Maybe we also have different criteria what makes an OST good. For some it's good enough if the music fits the game itself. They don't want to listen to it outside of the game, and that's fine, but I personally think it's a failure if that happens. And there wasn't a single track that stood out to me in the game or outside of it, a total blank shot, except for maybe the vocal theme from the beginning. The OST is not trash, but it's just, I don't know, it's not in my mind, it's just made me think, yeah, whatever, it fits, but it's not more than that. And again, it has the problem of being too beautiful. There are no harsh noises or clanking sounds like the old games that make you want to get out of there, but instead the music sounds even somewhat relaxing and inviting whenever it plops up. The game wants the ambient noises to shine in the normal world, and the audio design is nice and all, because you really feel there's an enemy behind you around the corner when they make noises, but yeah, the OST itself is not scary. I want music that makes me sweat, music that makes me want it to stop, music that feels so oppressive that it pulls down my mood. Not tracks that make me want to relax and drift off to sleep how they often sounded like to me. Maybe I should play through the game again but put on the Siren OST, then it would piss my pants most likely. With that said, I hope you enjoyed the video and will have a good day, a good night or whatever fits your time zone. I also hope others will have a more fun time with it. Should horror be fun though? That's a topic for a whole different day. I wouldn't mind playing a totally cool crazy action game where I can always use a fox arm though. Maybe some modders can turn it into something like that. I would play it a lot. No, I'm still not a fairy. Bye bye.